Welcome to the Experience Darden podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share a recent conversation with Rachel Schwam. Rachel is a dual degree student in the MBA Masters in International Relations program. Here at Darden, it's actually a joint program between the Darden School of Business and the School for Advanced International Studies at Johns Hopkins University. I recently caught up with Rachel to talk more about her background, her decision to pursue a dual degree, what she's enjoyed about her time at Darden, her advice for prospective students, and more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. And as always, if this conversation is helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe to the Experience Darden podcast so you never miss an update. And remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more. And now, without further ado, here is my conversation with Rachel Schwam. Rachel, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Brett.
Well, it's good to talk with you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Just halfway through my summer internship now and enjoying my time in New York City for that. So it's been good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Enjoying summer in DC, although it is very hot here, but per usual for the summer.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, before we get too far into the conversation, tell us a little bit more about who you are. Who are you? What's your background?
Yeah, so I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. And then I attended Wake Forest University in North Carolina for undergrad. And there I studied Spanish, politics, international affairs, and Latin American studies. And then after college, prior to business school, I was working at Deloitte Consulting in the DC area for about 4 years.
Did you always know that you wanted to pursue an MBA?
I think partially yes, partially no. I think coming out of college, I always knew that I wanted to pursue a master's degree of some kind at some point in the future. And, given that I had studied politics and international affairs, I knew that a master's in international relations was definitely an option for me. But then once I started working in the consulting world and learning more about business and how it works, I realized that I had a deep interest in business as well. And so I actually ended up going for a dual degree. So in addition to doing my MBA at Darden, I'm doing my master's in international relations at Johns Hopkins in DC. So I'm getting the best of both worlds.
Yeah, that's very cool. A lot of people, might be listening to this thinking about, doing a dual degree. What really persuaded you that the dual degree was the right step for you?
Yeah, I think for me, it was just, the first thing is you get kind of a bang for your buck, so to speak, and then also the timing element. So if I'd done them separately, it would have taken 4 years, but doing them together only takes 3. And I think also what's been interesting now that I've done a whole year at each school, I've been able to see how similar topics can be touched on, but often from different perspectives. And I think I was hoping for that going into it. And then once I did go into it, that ended up being the reality too. And just seeing how people talk about different scenarios from the policy side and then also the business side has been really fascinating for me.
How has it worked for you from a logistics standpoint? You mentioned that you've done a year at both schools. Some of our listeners may be interested in this particular dual degree. Can you share with us a little bit about what your schedules look like?
Yeah. So with this one, because it's at 2 different universities and 2 different locations, the way it works is you pick one to start at and you do a full year there, whether it's at Darden or at Johns Hopkins in my case. And so once you're there for that year, you're only doing classes for that program. And then for your second year, you're doing a full year of classes at the other program. And then the third year is split. So I had to move between my first and second year of the dual degree. And then I'm going to have to move halfway through my third year to make sure that I'm finishing out both degrees in time. So it does involve a little bit more logistics than just moving to Charlottesville for the MBA, but I felt like it would be worth it. And the nice thing too is that getting between DC and Charlottesville is quite easy, especially with the train. So I knew that it wouldn't be so bad once I got into it.
How did you decide which school you wanted to start at?
So this actually I was talking with Marav Fraser in the admissions office, and she works with a lot of the dual degree students. And so when I met with her, I just asked her, how should I approach this? And she suggested to me, at Darden, it's so tight knit and very cohort based. And so it would probably be best if you're able to graduate with the same people that you started with. And the only way to do that is to start at Johns Hopkins, do a year there, come to Darden, and then that way you're on the same schedule as everyone in your class. So that's what I ended up doing. And I think it was the right choice ultimately because, um, Johns Hopkins is a bit of a different setup there. So it didn't have the same feel as Darden, being in section with people and everything like that. So I think it ended up working out really well in that way.
Yeah, it's worth noting anybody who's interested in doing a dual degree should know Mara Fraser. She's definitely the person to know and to talk with if you have questions about any of the dual degrees. And in fact, she's been such a great source of podcast guests for us, encouraging us to reach out to people who are doing these dual degrees. So we featured these student stories on the podcast. So Rachel, what got you interested in Darden? Obviously, there's other places you can do a dual degree, but why Darden?
Yeah. So I think for me, there were quite a few factors. So the first thing was, as I mentioned, geography. So I knew that I would likely be in DC for my international relations program. And so I wanted somewhere that wasn't too far away so that I could make the logistics work for myself. But aside from that, and more importantly, I think Darden really stood out to me because of the interactions that I had with admissions, learning more about the case method, looking at the size of the program, the ability to do the dual degree. And then also, I really liked how there was a whole part of grounds at UVA that's dedicated to Darden. And being able to have that at my disposal was really cool. And then on top of that, once I got to it, I got admitted, I attended Darden days. I got to do a mock class and meet current students at the time. And I realized that Darden would really give me everything I would want out of an MBA experience in terms of the community and the learning element, because I wanted somewhere that would really challenge me intellectually, but also give me great people to experience it with and work through it with together.
Yeah, it's interesting your point about Darden having its own grounds. Darden is a little different than maybe some other schools of business out there in that it's only a graduate school, so there's no undergraduate population at Darden. So it's the grounds is entirely graduate students going through largely the full-time MBA program. We have some PhD students there as well, and of course our professional degree students find their way to Charlottesville occasionally during their program. Tell us a little bit more about your experience at Darden. What section were you?
I'm in section B, go birds. It's been really great so far. I think it definitely is. Darden's a program that will challenge you and push you. And I think that's important to note because some people might think that a lot of people I know just sometimes say, oh, well, isn't business school just a break? And I was like, not at Darden. It's not, you're really actively learning every day. And I think just being in section and being able to learn with those people day in and day out was a really neat experience and something that I hadn't really had experience with. I definitely had, smaller seminar classes in high school and college, but I had never done Socratic method with 70 people, especially on topics like finance and accounting that I had no prior coursework in. So I think, everyone in that room helped me better understand these topics and learn them. And I think the conversational nature of the way that we learn really helped me through that process. Because there were definitely moments, to be honest, where I found myself doubting if I could do it. And I think that, everyone, my section mates, my learning team, my friends, second years, admissions, professors, my family, my partner, everybody reminded me constantly that I could do it. And I was at Darden for a reason. And I think having that support network definitely helped as I navigated the first year.
Yeah, I think it's important to share that. I think that's a very common feeling for students across all of our MBA programs, and it's the nature of the learning experience. For something to be transformational, which is certainly the goal of the Darden MBA programs, it has to be challenging. It has to get you outside of your comfort zone. There likely are going to be those moments of doubt, but you're right. You're here for a reason. You were selected by the admissions committee because we feel like you can do the work here, you can be successful here. It can be easy to forget those things, but it's important to remind yourself of that and to lean on the support networks you have at school and in your life generally, Rachel. So that does resonate. I think that is part of the journey.
Yeah.
So how did your career goals evolve during your time, going through these programs? Did they stay the same? What you thought you wanted to do, is that still what you're thinking about, or had they changed?
I think when I came in, so I mentioned I'm doing the dual degree. I was kind of open to anything in the realm of business or international relations. And I was looking maybe to find something that was right at the intersection of the two. And the more I kind of dove into my MBA, realizing that, maybe I did want to lean a little bit more to the business side. And Darden has such great relationships with employers. It seemed like it would make sense to do that as well. And so I think coming into Darden, I knew that I wanted to get experience in a completely different industry than what I had been in. I knew there were some industries that I was just not meant for as well. So I think knowing what you're not meant to do definitely helps and figure out what you do want to do in the future. Um, and then I think on top of that, the coursework at Darden also helped me kind of wrap my mind around where my strengths lie, maybe where I'm not as strong, and also kind of confirmed some preconceived notions about things that I had in terms of different subject matters and seeing, okay, yeah, I'm not as strong in this, or oh, wow, like I didn't realize I'm actually kind of good at this. So it gave me those opportunities to kind of think through where could I actually see myself landing in terms of the type of work and then also the industry.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to acknowledge that can evolve during your time here, and sometimes it even includes the summer after your first year, getting there and actually being close to something through the internship, and that search process can continue into the second year. We talked about that a little bit recently on the podcast, and I think it's important for people to embrace that you do have the entirety of your MBA program to kind of explore, and of course, that process is going to continue into your career. You mentioned that you're going to be splitting time in this upcoming year between Darden and Johns Hopkins. How are you thinking about your courses? What's exciting to you when you look ahead to this next year?
I think so. For the Darden piece, we've already gone in and registered for our classes. So that's nice to know what I'm going to be taking in Q1 and Q2. And I think one thing I'm really excited about is doing a Darden worldwide course in the fall break. So I'm going to be going to Ireland for that, which will be really neat. And I like how Darden has the option to go and travel and learn while you're there too. And I think the cool thing as well is on the Johns Hopkins side of things, we have to do a capstone course, and that can take a lot of forms, but one of them is a study trip. And so I'm hoping to be able to travel for my capstone at Johns Hopkins as well. Really being able to take advantage of that international component when offered. But I think on top of that, just the courses I'm really excited about, especially for me, diving in mostly at Darden on the strategy, GEM, and leadership courses. Those are the ones I find most interesting. So
Do you have a sense of what you're going to do on that Darden Worldwide course in Ireland, or have they not quite shared the itinerary yet?
we do have some information about, it'll be a mix of company visits and cultural site visits. And we're going to be going to Dublin for part of it and Galway for the other part. So I'm just excited to go to a new country and meet people there and learn more about, both business and culture through those different activities. And Brian Moriarty is leading us on that trip. So looking forward to that and just spending more time with my other classmates that'll be on it too. So, but I'm excited to get the full itinerary once we have it. So,
Curious about this next year for you, just from a scheduling standpoint. So you mentioned that you spend half the year taking classes at Darden and like half the year taking classes at Johns Hopkins. How does that work logistically for you? I'm curious about it.
yeah. So, essentially, the reason why I'm able to do both degrees in 3 years is because both schools essentially cut out certain elective credits that you have to take. So you're still taking all of the core classes, which at Darden you do all in the first year. But at Hopkins, I still have a couple of required classes I need to take, maybe just one now. But so I'll do, the fall semester at Darden, and with my coursework, I'll be able to hit the required credits that I need for the dual degree, which is a little bit different than what you would need for the other Darden dual degrees or just the full-time MBA by itself. And then once I'm done with exams in Q2 at Darden, I'll be moving out of Charlottesville back to DC, and I'll be starting my classes at Johns Hopkins in January. And then I'll be taking courses there through the spring semester. And then I will graduate from both schools in May. And I think the graduations are 4 days apart. So luckily, I don't have to worry about trying to be in two places at once. So, but yeah, I think all things considered, being able to split the time, I think has been good, because trying to take courses at both schools at the same time would just be very difficult to do given the location differences and the different types of courses.
No, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the additional insight about exactly how you're managing through this. Because I was curious, like, would you just be commuting up to DC from Charlottesville for that last semester, or would you actually move? This is a very sort of speculative question, Rachel, but obviously we've got degree programs also in the DC area. We have part-time MBA and executive MBA students. We have electives for those students. Did you consider at all taking electives with that group as a way of maybe allowing you to continue to maybe move up to DC earlier, or be in DC for the full year?
I I had known a little bit about that, but I will say I didn't know entirely how it worked. So I think that was part of it. I think another thing too was, I have really enjoyed being in Charlottesville, and I think when I wrap up a semester early and move back to DC, it'll be a little bit weird because I got so used to being in classes with, my full-time MBA class. So I think I mostly just wanted to spend as much time with them as I could in Charlottesville, just because it is such a special community. But it is awesome how that is an option for students to be able to take courses with part-time MBA or executive MBA students. And I've been to the location in Arlington, and it's beautiful. And the views from it are amazing too. So that definitely helps. But yeah, I think for me, I mostly just wanted to spend as much time in Charlottesville as I could, and as my degree program would allow me.
I can understand that. Charlottesville is an incredible place. Well, Rachel, do you have any advice for our prospective student listeners out there? Anything that you would encourage them to think about as they consider their own MBA journey?
Yeah, I think for me, something that I was told during my graduate school experience was, whether you're applying for graduate school or you're applying for internships or full-time jobs, whatever it may be, don't count yourself out. I think just going for it and applying for whatever it might be, let them be the ones to say no to you, but you need to give yourself a shot at it if you want a shot at it. I think that's an important message, because sometimes I would find myself, when I was looking at business schools thinking, oh my gosh, am I qualified to get into this place? Or when I was looking at internships for the summer, I don't have all of these 10 bullets on the job application. Does that mean that I shouldn't apply? The answer is no. You should definitely give yourself the chance and then just wait and see what happens.
Yeah, we run into that a lot with the admissions process, where people have kind of conjured up this idealized candidate in their mind, and they're comparing themselves to this fictional person, and they feel like, oh, well, I don't have this right background and I haven't had this set of experiences. And rather than focusing on what they actually do bring to the table, and what makes them unique as a candidate, they tend to focus sort of on this sort of more negative reality of like, well, I haven't done X, Y, or Z, and there is no one right person for Darden. I think that's one of the real strengths of the community, is there's so many different kinds of people. I mean, we're thinking about the case method when we're putting the class together, so we want as many different perspectives and different experiences in the classroom. That's what's going to make the conversation really, really interesting. And so it can be hard for folks to sort of accept that there's a lot of value in what they've done, and even if it isn't a traditional business background, I mean that's the case for most people applying to business school these days. So I appreciate that point, Rachel.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, as you were talking about that, I was just thinking through, the mix of people that were in my learning team, in my section, in my broader class. And it just really is fascinating when you're having these discussions about cases with people who come from all these different backgrounds, whether it's industry or country or region, and being able to hear what they bring to the table. And I think just the culture of valuing what everyone brings to that table is amazing as well. And it really has panned out in reality too. So I've really enjoyed that part of it for sure.
Well, that's great. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's always interesting to learn about the dual degree experiences at Darden. And thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you, Brett.
And that was my conversation with Rachel Schwam, a dual degree student here at the Darden School of Business. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything like us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.